Kevin, let's talk about the 25th anniversary of the National Scenic Area. I know you've mentioned the gorge is sort of coming into adulthood. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think that when the legislation was passed, it was a one-of-a-kind piece of legislation, so no one really knew how it would play out. So you had the early gorge commissioners, the Forest Service came on board, the counties had to decide how they would do all of this. And so you go through sort of a maturation period. You know, you kind of have your growing pains. You kind of figure out, you know, the pendulum might swing too much one way, too much another way. And I think we're to a point now where a lot of the early controversy has subsided. I think there's always going to be controversy because it's such a beautiful place, so close to major population centers, and so many people love it. And so that's always going to be an issue. But I think we've kind of crossed a hump. And so I see it as sort of as when all of us were 25, we had 1 foot in childhood and 1 foot in adulthood. And we sort of thought we knew what we were doing, but we didn't quite know.
Yeah.
And those next few years were really pivotal. And I kind of see it the same way here, that you know, we've figured out how to collaborate on some things. We figured out how to agree to disagree. And so I think as we move forward, I'm really hopeful that the next 25 years will be even more fruitful and something that, you know, more and more people will be involved in. How do you make this one-of-a-kind legislation live up to its potential?
Okay.
You know, we're supposed to, they call when they talk about the goals of the National Scenic Area, they use the term Snickers. You know, you think of a Snickers bar. Well, that's because you're supposed to protect the scenic, the natural, the cultural, and the recreation resources. Oh. So it's the Snickers. And then on top of that, you have this second purpose of how do we promote the economies of the gorge communities as it's consistent with the first purpose. So, you know, we all talk about sustainability now.
Right.
That word didn't exist in 1986, but this legislation, you know, they put it forward. So it really was, I think it was a pretty visionary idea.
What do you think it is that has made it so that you can, or people can agree to disagree, as you put it? What do you think it is that's made that possible, and why has that sort of, you know, that progress taken place? Do you think it's just knowledge, or what do you think has really happened for that to sort of be there now?
I think there's a couple things. One is that first off, change is hard. No matter what, change is hard, and there takes an adaptation period. And I think when the National Scenic Area Act passed, a lot of folks were told that it was going to be dire, it would be, you know, people being dragged out of their homes, all of this kind of stuff, and it didn't happen. I think the other thing is, over the years, we've seen some of the gorge communities, and the Dalles is a great example. They've figured out, well, how do we take advantage of this? How do we use it to our benefit? And even, you know, what I heard is when Google came in, several of the folks who were making that decision, part of it was the National Scenic Area. Part of it was the quality of life that's been created through protecting landscapes, providing money for recreation. They realized, well, this is a place that we would like our employees to be. So there were other, you know, issues too, obviously, but once that started happening, I think I've seen the economic development chambers of commerce and whatever often now market the National Scenic Area as one of the advantages. Where
really?
10, 15 years ago,
nobody
that wasn't
wanted
the
to be
case at all. We didn't want to talk about it.
It was a taboo thing.
So I think it's just over time you start understanding, well, if maybe this isn't so bad. You know?
So a lot of it was probably just rooted in fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So with the 25 years, you know, now being upon us. I guess November's the official month where 25 years rolls over. What do you think the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years are going to bring the gorge?
Well, it's interesting because when I remember when I first came on in the mid-90s, a lot of the issues were sort of individual development. You know, this landowner wanted this house here, and there was a lot of, and it even polarized things more and more. What we've seen is in the recent years, those issues have subsided more, but you're seeing a lot more push for industrial and commercial development, and in addition to that. So you have pushes for a destination resort or a casino or, the energy development and such. But what's really been fascinating to me is over those years, we have a number of people who either have lived in the gorge for years or have recently moved there and have followed the rules, built their houses, and then they see something else come in that says, that doesn't seem fair. That doesn't seem consistent. So we're seeing more and more pockets of neighbors in gorge communities who are calling us and wanting technical expertise or wanting to figure out, well, how is this happening? What can we do to make a difference to protect our neighborhood? So
they're almost policing themselves or their areas.
Yeah, and I think that is going to continue on and on. That, early on when the National Scenic Area Act was passed, there were some residents in the gorge who were interested in seeing it pass, but the majority of them were not. Most of the public support came from Portland, Vancouver, etc. What we've been seeing in the last few years is more and more of the voices for protection are coming from the gorge. It's not the people who live in Southeast Portland. It's people who live up on Underwood Mountain, or people who live at Cape Horn, or outside the Dalles, that kind of 7 Mile Hill. That's really, I think that's sort of the future.
Yeah.
The other thing I just would touch on that I think can be a very exciting thing is we are this year looking to launch a project that we're going to be calling Gorge Towns to Trails. And the whole idea is creating trail systems that link into urban areas. And, if you looked at a map now of all the land that's been purchased by the Forest Service, like between, for example, Hood River and the Dalles, there's if you wanted to create a swath between Hood River, Mosier, and the Dalles, 90% of that swath is already there in public land. With a few key pieces, you could make a connection, create trail systems, and what it could do is connect directly into the communities. So, for example, so many times I've heard from communities that, hiking doesn't help us at all because people go to a trailhead, they have their water bottle, they have their sandwich, they hike, and then they leave, and they never visit the community. Well, if you're at a trailhead in the community of Mosier, right next to the Thirsty Woman Brew Pub, and you go for a hike, you're probably going to stop there after that hike. And you're probably going to start appreciating, this is a great little town. And same with the Dalles. You'll start saying, well, there's a connection to the waterfront here. I didn't know that. There's a 9-mile trail in the town here.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Right.
So it's something that I'm hoping that we can generate momentum and get a lot of support from businesses, community leaders, because in the long run, the long-term vision should be a trail system that wraps around the entire gorge.
That benefits all of us.
That benefits all of us, and also a trail system that ties into alternative transportation.
All right.
So you could have shuttles that are taking people to Dog Mountain or Eagle Creek or other things. So you don't have jammed up parking lots, you don't have more vehicles on the road.
Right.
The gorge is set up for that. It really is set up for that.
Yeah.
So it's just we've got to have the vision to kind of move it forward.
Right. Very cool. Well, when we come back, we'll talk a bit more about that, as well as I want to talk to you about Cape Horn. So you guys stick with us. Be right back.
After the break.
So in 2006, our land trust, the first purchase we made was that property. We bought that house. We tore down the house. We recycled, I think, 70% of the materials.